Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into the story of a guy who literally grabbed a fractured, chaotic Roman Empire by the horns and entirely flipped its trajectory. We're talking about a figure whose reign didn't just win a few battles, it marked a massive shift, officially bridging the gap from classical antiquity straight into the foundations of the Middle Ages. We are dealing with a true historical juggernaut here. Think about the sheer scale of the before and after. Before him, the Roman state was relentlessly hunting Christians, the economy was drowning in runaway inflation, and the borders were practically crumbling. Fast forward to the end of his life, he decriminalized Christianity, launched a brand new gold currency that stuck around for 1,000 years, and literally picked up and moved the capital of the greatest empire on earth. It's wild to think about. So let's start with part one. The divided empire. To really grasp his impact, we've got to look at the absolute mess of a world he was born into back in 272 AD. The empire was basically held together by political duct tape. They were using the system called the Tetrarchy, instituted by Emperor Diocletian. It split the Roman world 4 ways to manage its massive size: 2 senior emperors, 2 junior ones. Constantine's own dad actually rose to become one of those rulers in the West. But as you can probably guess, splitting absolute power 4 ways just meant constant plotting, intense paranoia, and alliances that shifted by the week. Nobody trusted anybody. Now, because his dad was ruling over in the West, Constantine was kept at the eastern court of Diocletian and Galerius as a virtual hostage. He was essentially a political pawn to make sure his father behaved. And while he was growing up there, he had a front row seat to the Great Persecution starting in 303 AD. He literally watched as the state ordered the systematic destruction of churches, burned Christian scriptures, and stripped believers of their rights. It was, without a doubt, the most brutal repression of Christians in Roman history. Constantine wasn't oblivious. He knew exactly how much danger he was in, especially with the brutal Emperor Galerius gaining power. So, he makes a run for it. The sources describe this incredibly dramatic nighttime escape, riding like a madman from post house to post house. And get this. Supposedly, he hamstrung all the horses he left behind, so Galerius's men couldn't catch him. He finally makes it to Britain, joins his dad's military campaign, and when his father dies in York in 306 AD, the loyal troops immediately hail Constantine as emperor, or Augustus. Which brings us to section 2, conquer by this sign. Of course, claiming to be emperor and actually running the show are 2 very completely different things. His acclamation kicked off a massive, brutal free-for-all across the Roman world. That whole Tetrarchy system, it completely dissolved into rival warlords fighting for supremacy. Over the next 18 years, Constantine systematically picked apart his rivals. He secured his base in Gaul and Britain first, but the ultimate prize, and the biggest threat, was his rival Maxentius, who had seized control of Rome itself. This sets up the absolute turning point of his reign in 312 AD, just before the Battle of the Milvian Bridge against Maxentius. And it presents us with this huge historical mystery. All his advisors, even the soothsayers, were telling him to back off. They said the sacrifices were producing terrible omens. Do not attack Rome. But Constantine pressed on anyway, supposedly guided by something completely supernatural. According to Christian sources from the time, like Eusebius and Lactantius, he experienced this profound vision. Eusebius claims Constantine saw a literal cross of light in the sky above the sun, with the words, "In this sign thou shalt conquer." The vision instructed him to fight under the heavenly sign of the Chi-Rho, the first 2 letters of Christ's name in Greek. Trusting this, he told his troops to paint this totally unfamiliar emblem right onto their shields. So marching under this new banner, his heavily outnumbered army completely crushed Maxentius's forces right outside Rome. It was an incredibly short battle. Maxentius's troops panicked and broke, and while trying to retreat across this makeshift bridge of boats over the Tiber River, Maxentius himself was actually pushed into the water by his own fleeing soldiers and drowned. Just like that, Constantine entered Rome victorious. What's really fascinating here is how fast he moved to use his new power to protect the exact same people the state had just been hunting. The very next year, 313 AD, he meets up with his co-emperor Licinius and issues the Edict of Milan. This was huge. It didn't just vaguely tolerate Christianity. It officially decriminalized it, ended the brutal persecutions, and actually ordered that confiscated church property be given back. An absolute game changer for Western religion. Moving on to section 3, building a new Rome. Unsurprisingly, the alliance with his co-emperor Licinius didn't hold. They fought a massive civil war, and by 324 AD, Constantine defeated him, becoming the sole, undisputed ruler of the Roman world. And once he reunified the empire, he did something radical. He completely shifted its center of gravity. He saw that the West was getting remote and vulnerable, while the East was rich and crucial for defending against the Persians. So he takes the ancient Greek city of Byzantium and turns it into Constantinople, the new Rome, a highly strategic, Christian-focused capital built from the ground up. But he didn't just change the map, he totally re-engineered the government. To fight that insane inflation we mentioned earlier, he introduced the gold solidus. This coin was so stable, it became the standard currency in Europe for over 1,000 years. He also disbanded the notorious Praetorian Guard and separated civil and military powers. And knowing that religious unity meant political stability, he personally convened the First Council of Nicaea in 325 AD to hammer out standardized Christian doctrine. But, and this is a really big but, right in the middle of all these holy and administrative victories, things get incredibly dark. In 326 AD, he ruthlessly orders the execution of his own eldest son, Crispus, by poison. And shortly after that, he has his wife, Empress Fausta, killed in an overheated bath. The exact reasons? Still a massive historical mystery. Was it an illicit affair? A ruthless, cold-blooded maneuver to secure the succession? We don't know for sure, but their names were quite literally scrubbed from public monuments in a total erasure of their memory. Which brings us to our final section, the Constantinian legacy. This kind of shocking family bloodshed leaves historians scratching their heads to this day. How do we reconcile the guy who ended the persecutions with the guy who executed his own wife and son? When we look at the historical debate, it's totally split. The medieval church painted him as this idealized, saintly hero of Christian virtue. But later Renaissance and 19th century historians, like Jacob Burckhardt, saw a scheming secularist, a brilliant, calculating operator who just weaponized Christianity to cement his own absolute power. So was it profound faith or just highly effective politics? This whole debate really comes to a head in his final days. Despite championing the church for decades, he famously puts off his official baptism until he is literally on his deathbed in 337 AD. He got sick right before a massive campaign against Persia. A lot of historians argue he delayed it precisely so the baptism would wash away all the brutal sins, including those family murders, that he committed while doing the dirty work of being emperor. He finally gets baptized by an Arian bishop just before he dies. So it leaves us with this incredible question to ponder. When you look at the entirety of his life, escaping as a hostage, uniting a fractured world, founding Constantinople, and transforming Western religion, was that famous deathbed baptism the ultimate calculated move of a master politician? Or was it the genuine final leap of faith of a deeply flawed man? It's something to think about the next time you consider the foundations of our modern world. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.